This is February 12th, 1985. This is Joe Todd, an interview with Mr. Ralph Baird, Woodward, Oklahoma. Sir, where were you born?
What?
Where were you born?
Southwest of Woodward down here, about 6 miles.
When's your birthday?
October 19th, 1921.
1921. And who's your father?
Ralph Baird.
And your mother?
Bernice Baird.
What's it maiden name?
Delp.
Delp, D-E-L-P.
P.
Okay. What kind of chores you do as a little boy around the farm?
Milk cows, cut wood, hauled hay, fed the cattle, fixed fence. You name it around the farm, that's what I did.
Any of your grandparents or great-grandparents in the Civil War?
Well, I'm not sure whether my great-grandparents was. My great-great-grandparents were.
Ever hear any stories about them?
Yeah. I've read this of my granddad Baird. I've got a little book that he kind of made up before he died, and I remember it. I think it was his granddad and Ulysses S. Grant were pretty good friends in the Civil War.
So you made up this book?
He did. It's in his own handwriting.
You have it at the house?
Yeah. It's like kind of a short, condensed form of his life, is what it is.
Yeah. I'd like to read it one of these days.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I'll tell you what. He went broke 3 times, and finally his uncle put him in business. Again, raising sheep down at Lacine, Kansas, and that time he made a go of it.
Yeah.
And when he died, he lived right here south of Sharon when he died.
Where did you start school?
When?
When and where?
I can't remember the exact year, but it was, let's see. '27, I believe. 1927.
You go through high school?
Yeah,
What year did you graduate?
1938.
1938. Did you do any work for the CCC or WPA?
No. What was that other question you asked me about school a while ago? You said something else. What? Where did I go to school?
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah.
Well, I went the first 8th grades to a little country school out there, Prairie Gem, and also went to Peace, one they call Peace Country School. It was 7 miles west of Sharon and a half mile south, and this other school was 8 miles south of Woodward and a half back east.
Okay. Tell me about the dust storms. Black Sunday.
Well, you've probably heard it 1,000 times. It just looked like a big old dark cloud coming up, but instead of a cloud, it was dust. The main thing, the worst one was, of course, there was a lot of them. That one was something else. It was thick you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face hardly.
How
You
long
just-
that? Go ahead.
You just about had to get wet rags and put on your face to keep from breathing all that stuff, to even breathe. It penetrated everything too. I mean, it got to every kind of a crack there was. There wasn't any of the buildings built tight enough to keep it out.
What caused those dust storms?
Dry weather, over grazing and over farming it, no way to hold the land back in those days. Dry weather was the main cause of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't anything grow, and whenever they farmed it up to put the crop out, why, they couldn't get enough crop started on it to hold the land, and it consequently it just started blowing. Once it got started, there wasn't no stopping it.
Mm-hmm. How many years those dust storms last?
Oh, I'd say the worst ones probably lasted, there was a period there of about 10 years, actually, when there was a lot of ground blowing, but probably about 5 is when they were the worst. Period of about 5 years.
What ended the dust storms?
Wet weather, mostly. That, and people started getting machinery to where they could farm the ground a little better and hold it, you know. Take listers and stuff like that, and got machinery enough to go out there.
Yeah.
Got where they could do it. When they farmed with horses, you know, there wasn't no way to stop it once it got started.
What were you doing on Pearl Harbor Day?
Pearl Harbor
Yeah.
Day? Oh. See, that was on Sunday, wasn't it?
December 7th.
I think we went to church that morning. Come home and ate dinner. And I think we didn't even hear about it till about noon that day.
What was your first reaction?
Well, I figured we was in for a big war. That's what I thought when I first heard it. They'd been talking war so much anyhow that I knew it was coming then.
Did you enlist or were you drafted?
No, I was drafted.
What year?
42. I've got my discharge paper here. I'll check that to be sure. Okay. I think it tells me. 18th August, 42.
Where'd you take basic?
Fort Sill. Not, well, that and Wichita Falls, or Fort Shepherd Air Force Base, Shepherd Field at Wichita Falls.
Okay. Tell me something about basic at Shepherd. What was basic like then?
Well, the basic we had we did most of our, at Shepherd Field, that was an Air Force training center for the Air Force. And most of the basic we had down there was, didn't have much to do with rifles and guns and that. I mean, it was calisthenics and running and getting in shape, and then we went to this technical school down there to learn how to fix those airplanes up. But outside of the calisthenics and, you know, the we had several long hikes down there. Getting us physically fit, you know, that was the main thing we went for, as basic training down there is what we went through.
And after Shepherd, where'd you go?
Well, I went to Burbank, California, to another training school.
What kind of school?
It's an Air Force airplane. And then I went to Salina, Kansas. And then they were hard up for gunnery crews, and instead of what I was being trained for, they took me to Blythe, California, and put me on a training for a gunnery on a B-17. And we took 30 days training there, or maybe it was 2 months, I don't know. Then we went to Dyersburg, Tennessee, took some more training there,
Mm-hmm.
and then we was shipped overseas to England
When did you go overseas?
in October of 43.
You fly over?
No, went over on the Queen Elizabeth.
What was the trip like on the QE?
Kind of scary. See, that ship was, I don't know how many people was on there, but I heard that one time there was about 6,000 on it, on this one ship. I don't know whether that's true or not.
What part of the ship were you in? Did you stay in?
I couldn't even tell you. It was so big.
Where did all the men sleep?
Well, it was down in the lower decks. Of course, we got to go up on top too. But see, that thing was about every minute or 2 minutes, something like that, that thing changed course on account of submarines. You know, it zigzagged, just like that, all the way across.
Ever see any German submarines at all on the way over?
No, but it changed course just constantly, and you just about the time you brace yourself, you'd be turning one way, then you'd have to brace yourself, it'd be a turning the other direction, you know. And that's what they said it was for. I don't know. But that ship just, you know, instead of going straight across, she just kind of, and they said they done that on account of keep a submarine from zeroing in on us.
And where'd you land?
I can't tell you the name of the place in England. It was in England.
England?
But I can't tell you the name of the place. I can't remember now the name of it.
Okay. And where'd you go after you landed?
Well, we was at a airfield up there close to Kettering, or Northampton. I can't even, if I'd have brought it with me, I didn't bring that with me. I can't even tell you the name of the, it was in I think it was a 384th Bombardment Group. I've got it all at home, but I didn't bring it with me.
Mm-hmm. And so you were a gunner on a B-17?
Gunner on a B-17.
Which gun? The tail, nose, or
Top, the ball turret.
Bolter? That's on top?
Bottom, on the bottom.
Bottom.
I was the smallest one on the crew, and that's the reason I got put down there. Because that thing didn't have much room in it.
What's the bomb load in the B-17?
What was the bomb load? In pounds, or?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you. That's been so long, that's been so long ago, I forgot.
So what were your duties as a ball gunner? What'd you do?
Well, we didn't do anything unless we got attacked with fighter planes, and then you tried to keep from shooting you down.
Were you successful?
Nope.
How many missions were you on?
13.
Tell me about, before you got shot down, about firing at the Germans. So what was going through your mind when you were being attacked?
You didn't have much time to think.
It looked like you'd be awful vulnerable hanging down that little ball down there.
Well, it's a long ways to the ground, I know that. We were flying probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000 feet, or maybe sometimes 30,000, I'm not sure. We were pretty high. Tried to.
And what bombing mission were you on when you got shot down?
13th.
And where were you?
There's a list of them.
Bremen, Frankfurt.
That's the date and the list and the places.
And the last one is where?
Ascherleben.
And Kaput.
Yeah, that's when we got shot down by fighter planes too.
February 22nd of 44.
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
Well, I knew the fighter planes had hit the ship pretty hard. It was just barely flying, and I never did know who gave the order to bail out, but somebody did. And thank goodness that electrical, see that ball turret was run with electricity. Thank goodness that stuff was still working, because I rolled that thing up and I couldn't wear that chute inside it because there wasn't room. And my shoes, I had those heated flying boots on, and I had the shoes laying there in the side of the airplane, so if I ever did have to bail out, I was going to grab those shoes and take them with me. But when I got up, rolled that thing out and got out that ball turret, I snapped that chute on, it's a little old chest type chute pack. I snapped that thing on me, and there was one guy, one of the waist gunners was still, he was just in the door ready to bail out, and I didn't wait for him. I just dove out the window, head first. And
if the electricity hadn't been working, what would have happened?
well, I'd have had to roll that thing up by hand, and the fact is I probably never would have got it rolled up by hand. You'd had a hand crank in there, you know, to roll it around to where you could open the door. But it takes a little while to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I didn't wait for that one. There was still one guy ready. He was just in the process of bailing out. I didn't even grab them shoes either. I was wanting out of that thing because I knew it was going to blow up.
Did it?
Yeah.
How long after you bailed out?
I don't know, because I didn't open that chute. I fell a long ways before I ever opened that chute. But I do know this. I was supposed to bat a friend in England. Harold Mark was his name. He lived here, and he was in England, and I was supposed to meet him there that day and that night. And he came out to the base. He found out I wasn't there or something, and they reported back at the base that the plane blew up and there wasn't any survivors. And of course the word got back into my folks and everybody else, and they thought it was all gone, you know. But what happened, I fell a long ways before I pulled that chute, and that plane was probably up and out of sight of me, and I wasn't looking anyhow. But they said it blew up.
Did you have any training for parachute jumps?
Nope. First time and the last time, I hope.
On the job training?
Yeah.
What was going through your mind at that time?
Yeah. Well, I was doing a little praying. You ought to know something. I didn't even realize I had some shell fragments in me too. Wasn't any of them very bad, but I guess that's what it was. Either that or pieces of that airplane or something. They was in my arms and face some, and the only bad one I had right here was in my face where it knocked out part of my teeth here. But the co-pilot and the pilot, I didn't know who gave the order to bail out for several years after that. And he was from California. And we went to California in '69 and went out there and visited him. And he was the one that gave the order to bail out. He said those fighter planes, the first pass they made a direct hit on the pilot. His name was Q. He was from New York, and just killed him instantly. And they were sitting there side by side. And they made 2 or 3 passes, and they hit him every time, and he was unscathed. He didn't get hit at all. And I know they made 3 passes, fighter planes did, and every time they hit the plane. And I think we got one fighter. I'm pretty sure we got one fighter shot down, but they were just one after another coming at us.
How many fighter planes did you shoot down in your 13 missions?
Well, I'm not positive I got any, but I hit 2 or 3. I knew that I hit 1 or 2 for sure, but you could tell that, but we actually didn't ever see them blow up or anything like that, you know, or didn't know for positive.
Okay, you're falling down, bailing out.
Well, when I hit the ground, that was quite a sudden jar. That little old chest type chute wasn't made for. And of course, I didn't know anything about them. I hit the ground pretty hard, knocked the wind out of me, but it didn't hurt anything else. And finally got on my feet and started looking around, and it was kind of in a little old pasture, a meadow, and there was an old German civilian coming over there. Big old portly man. He come over there and got me, and he had a little Luger in his hand. I couldn't speak a word of German, but I knew what he meant. He got behind me and took me over there to a road about a mile, and there were some German soldiers over there, and they already had about half a dozen guys gathered up that had been shot down. I think they shot down about 3-4 planes that day in our bunch.
Mm-hmm.
And before it was over, they had a whole truckload of us gathered up, and some of them own crew members and some of them weren't. Some were from other crews.
What was going through your mind when you were taken prisoner?
What was going through my mind? Well, I was scared, but yet I wasn't actually, I don't know, it was a feeling that I never had before. I wasn't frantic or anything like that, you know. I said if it's going to be this way, it's going to be that way, so I'll just make the best of it, and that's it. That's all you can do.
After you put in the truck, what happened?
Well, they took us to a little old town. Well, before they took us to this town, though, they marched us down through this town, these German soldiers first, and that was the scary part of it. Of course, we'd been a-bombing these towns all around, and boy, there's some of them German civilians that was pretty well wrought up, which you couldn't blame them. Boy, they was wanting them German soldiers to kill us and everything else. You could tell, I couldn't speak German, but then you could tell the way they was acting. They was hollering and yelling at us, you know. But while we'll say the German soldiers protected us from any harm, now we'll say that. They didn't let us, they could have turned us over to them civilians and they'd have probably killed us.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't. They finally loaded us in the truck and they took us to some big old brick building and put us in some rooms there overnight, and then finally there was a German doctor come around and he doctored my cuts and places up. Well, I had a tooth broke here off, and he doctored that up pretty good, and he sewed this up. This lip was all cut open, and he deadened it with some kind of stuff, and he sewed that up, this German doctor. And then we was there for about a day, and they loaded us up again and put us on a train and took us to Frankfurt to is a receiving center for prisoners of war. Boy, they had a bunch of them down there too. And then we was down there about a week, and they give us Red Cross food parcels, and they give us some clothes. And I wore a bunch of blisters on my feet. I had those heated flying shoes on, and I couldn't hardly walk. I'd lost one of those big heavy boots. It'd come off when my shoe opened, and these heated flying boots had little wires run to them, you know, to keep your feet warm. It's plugged in the plane, you know, the electrical system. And them things wore a bunch of blisters on my feet of walking. But anyhow, after that, after we got through this place at Frankfurt, they interrogated us down there and everything, and tried to get a little information out of us. They didn't get much, but they might have got a little, you know, about all you could give is your name, rank, serial number, and that's all you're supposed to give. But then they loaded us on a train, and boxcars they was. Just had a little straw in there. And we was on that train for 7 days, and that old train would go a ways and it'd stop, and go a ways and it'd stop. And finally, we wound up at, it was up there in East Prussia, at Heidekreuz. I've got it wrote down here, I think. Stahlgluff 6. We got there March the 2nd in 1944, and see, it was shot down February 22nd.
What kind of food did they feed you?
The Germans didn't feed us very much. We'd get a little serving of potatoes about once a day, and some stuff they call coffee for breakfast, and maybe once every other day or so we'd get a little kind of a cooked barley or something for breakfast. But we'd get Red Cross food parcels, and they'd have to last, they were in a little square box about 10 inches by 8 inches high, about 10 inches square by 8 inches high. They had a lot of concentrated stuff in them and everything. But you had to split that between two guys, and it had to last you a week.
With the German guards, they ever mistreat you?
Just once or twice. Outside of that, they weren't too bad. There's a few times they did, but not too much.
What would be the reason for them to mistreat you? Well,
The main reason was their commanding officer. When we was moved from one camp to another one time, it was a red-haired German captain that, boy, he had it in for us. That's when they moved us from this first camp to the second camp, and they put us on a ship and went out in the Baltic Ocean, and we was on that thing for a while, and then we finally docked, and we got off of that, and they took all of our shoes off and put them in one boxcar, and then we was on that train for several days, and finally it stopped, and we was there all night in this train, and about daylight the next morning they went to a lot of hollering and yelling went on, and this old German captain was barking orders, and they opened them doors and they had them shoes all in the pile, and you had to try to find you a pair of shoes that fit you and get them on right quick. And then they started running us down this road, and they had these police dogs and so forth, and this old German captain, he was mad son of a bitch. I guess he was really mad at us. But they run us down that road. It seemed like it's 5 or 6 miles, but I think it must have not been more than 2 or 3. And I know several times they let them police dogs, if you fell out, they'd let them old police dogs take a bite of you. And even a few guys got jabbed in the rear with a bayonet a little bit. But I know when we come inside of this, it was a new prison camp they built. When we come inside of that camp, boy, we was getting desperate, I tell you what, because we wasn't in no physically good shape anyhow.
where was that camp?
Stettin, it was, that was Stahlgluff 4. Key fighting. We got there July the 17th in 44.
How was,
And the Russians run us out of both places. See, they had to move us, or let the Russians have us.
Describe prison life. Your average day in a prison camp.
No, bye. Well, the first thing you done of a morning, they had a certain time, I can't think of what it was. Well, we'd get up and we'd eat breakfast if we had any breakfast to eat. We'd eat a little bit. And then they'd start blowing whistles, and you all had to line up, and they had this prison divided into different compounds. But you all had to go out there and get in formation, and they counted you. Sometimes they had trouble counting, it seems like, because sometimes they'd have to count us 2 or 3 times before they satisfied. Then you could go back to your barracks, and it wasn't so bad after we'd been there a while. We started getting some books and stuff through the Red Cross, and playing cards, stuff like that, you know, entertainers. I don't know how, well, let's see. I don't know whether I got it in here. I might have. This little old deal here I kept track of.
Did you keep that in the prison camp?
Huh?
Did you keep that in the prison camp?
Mm-hmm. I brought this back with me.
For a diary?
It's sort of a diary, little old deal. I was going to show you here, I don't know whether I got it in here or not, of the amount of books that I read when I was in that camp. It may not be in here.
Would you let us make a Xerox copy of that?
Huh?
Would you let us make a copy of that?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll let you make a copy of it.
Okay.
Here's contents of Red Cross food parcels right here. That thing can describe it better than I can, really.
Yeah. How did the German guards treat you normally in the camps?
Well, they were pretty strict, but I didn't blame them for that. They had to be. You know, they were under orders. And when we was actually in those prison camps themselves, I wouldn't say that we really got mistreated too much. As far as I know, there might have been some guys that was. I'm not going to say. But I never actually seen any, what I'd call, like taking somebody out and beating them up or anything like that while I was there. That one time that they moved us, now the last time they moved us again, that was the third time the Russians, or the second time the Russians run us out. And they had to move us again. And part of the camp, I was one of the lucky ones, we got to go on a train to this other camp down there by Stettin. But part of the POWs, they moved out on foot. And that, mind you, that around in Germany, and they didn't have anything to eat except what they get scrounge. And now they had it rough. I know. Part of my crew members is on that. They really had it rough.
But you weren't in that group?
No, I wasn't in that group. I was one of the lucky ones there.
How come you weren't?
Beats me. They just went and picked a bunch. They just picked out certain ones, and maybe certain ones in the prison camp, or well, they didn't go out and just pick guys out of a room or anything like that. They just picked certain parts of the prison camp to get on this train, and I guess they didn't have room for anybody else, so the rest of them, they just moved them out on foot, and they were just wandering around old Germany till the war ended.
Because the Russians were advancing, that was...
Mm-hmm.
Whenever they moved them out, well, it looks like the prisoners would outnumber the guards.
Looks like what?
The prisoners would outnumber the guards in a case like that, when you're moving them.
Oh, they would. Sure.
When you were moving like that, how'd they feed you on these trains when they were?
Not very much. Very little when we was being moved.
Did you know the war was coming to an end?
Mm-hmm. I don't know where we got the information, but we knew just about what was going on all the time in those prison camps. It had to be smuggled into some of the German guards, this information. Because every day, almost every day, in those barracks, there'd be one guy come around and he'd have it wrote down on a little sheet of paper, just what was all happening. And that information, we either had a radio in there somewhere, or it was being smuggled in through the Germans. Now, I don't know which. I didn't want to know, because, really, as long as we get the information, it helped.
Right. I heard of one prison camp for airmen that had a German prison guard they called Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of him?
No.
He was born in Chicago.
Yeah.
When the war broke out, he went back to Germany and joined the German army.
Yeah. No, I never heard of it.
Yeah. How long were you on this train being moved around?
Well, when they moved us the first time from Frankfurt up there, we was on that train about 7 days. Then when they moved us out of this other prison camp from up there at Heidekreuz to the second prison camp, they marched us down to, it's right on the Baltic Ocean. And we was in the hold of a big old coal barge, just packed in there like sardines, for about 3 or 4 days. And then they took us out of there and put us on a train, and we was on that train for a couple of days. And that's when they got us out and they run us down this road. And then when they moved us the next time, they moved us by train that time, and we was only on a train probably 3 or 4 days that time.
Mm-hmm. You ever bombed or strafed by the Allies?
Ever what?
Bombed or strafed by the Allies?
No. We were too far east. See, all those camps we were in is what's
either in East Germany or Poland or, well, Heidekrug was in East Prussia, which is up there by those little old countries, Latvia and Estonia and Lithuania.
How many months were you a prisoner?
15 months.
15 months. And tell me about the day you were liberated.
Well, all of a sudden one morning we got up and the German guards were all gone.
Were you on the train?
Huh?
Were you still on the train?
Oh no, that was in this prison camp up to Barth.
Okay.
Stalag Luft 1.
Okay.
Yeah, up there by Barth. And the American officer, now this was sort of an officer's camp. In fact, I met two or three of I met the bombardier and navigator and the co-pilot was all there in this camp. And I got, no wait a minute, the bombardier and navigator was. I didn't get to see my co-pilot. He was in a different camp or a different part of it. And the odd part of it was I met a guy there that I'd never met before, but he was a brother to one of my near neighbors down here, Hazel Myers. He lived right north of me, and he was her brother. His name was Ward Lewis, and he'd been a prisoner. And that's where I met him, was in that prison camp, and that was the most odd situation you ever be there. I knowed his sister all my life.
Yeah.
But anyhow, the American officers kind of took charge when the Germans moved out, and they told everybody not to move, not to try to leave. And about a day later, or 2 or 3 days, maybe a day or two, well, there was a Jeep, American Jeep come in there with some soldiers, and they told us to stay put. And they was in the process of, see, we were in Russian-controlled territory. They'd already stopped the Americans from coming in any farther. And they said they was trying to make arrangements from the Russians to fly a bunch of planes in there to get us out. So we stayed there about 8 days before they finally there was an airfield there pretty close, and they flew a bunch of B-24s in there and loaded us out, flew us back to France. So we was actually there 7 or 8 days after the war was over before we got out of there.
Tell me about coming back to the States.
Well,
Did you come by boat or?
by boat. We landed at Newport News, Virginia, and
What's the first thing you did when you hit the States?
the first thing, gosh, mighty, I don't remember.
Or what was your reaction when you were liberated? What was going through your head when you realized you were free?
Well, I was glad it was all over, or I thought it was all over. I was happy that I was still alive, I know that.
What was the death rate in those camps? How many prisoners died in those camps?
Well, as far as I know, I didn't know of hardly any, very few. I think most all of them made it through in pretty good. There wasn't anybody close to me or around where I was at that I knew that died. That don't mean that there wasn't some died, but the particular places where I was at, like I said, them camps, there was thousands of them in them camps. They were divided into compounds, and then each barracks. You could go from one barracks to another, but you didn't want to. You wasn't allowed to do a whole lot of travel. You couldn't go from one logger to another logger.
What's a logger?
Well, it'd be a compound,
Okay, yeah.
you know.
How many men in a barracks or a camp?
How many in a barracks?
Yeah.
Well, there was 10 men in each room. I don't know how many rooms was in those things. There was probably 100 in each barracks at least.
What, do you have regular bunks in there? Or?
Oh, they were little old bunk bed deals, and you had little narrow things about that wide, and they had about 5 slats, about 1x4s, 5 or 6 that you put in there, and then it had a little old mattress with some straw in it that you laid on top of that, and then blankets, and they had stoves in them that had that you had coal, that gives you coal to burn.
What do you remember most about prison life? What sticks in your mind most?
Well, it's an experience I wouldn't ever want to go through again, but I'll tell you what, I wouldn't take anything for the damn experience. It really, tells you, I don't know how to express it. It makes you appreciate the good life. I guess you might say that. Anybody that's ever went through that, well, for instance, when my kids was growing up, and we'd be eating a meal at the table, I get so mad at them kids sometimes. The food, you'd sit down to a plate of nice food, you know, and they'd throw up their noses at it and eat a bite or two, and I don't like this. And then they'd get up from the table and just leave a whole bunch of food there. You know, it took me years to get over that. I get so mad at them. I used to get on them. I said, you ought to have to starve once. You'd appreciate that food.
Tell me about the hunger. How bad was the hunger?
Well, you don't, when you gradually, you don't notice that hunger so much when you just gradually, your stomach shrinks up. And I weighed about 150 when I shot down. When I was liberated, I weighed about 125, which still wasn't bad. You know, I wasn't suffering from malnutrition or anything, but still, you know, that tells you that you wasn't getting too much to eat.
Right.
It's kind of mind over matter. You know, when you're in a have-to case, you can do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when it's going to be that way, you just resign yourself to the fact it's going to be that way.
Right.
But if you take somebody out here in this country and give them the same treatment, you never hear so much go on in your life. There wasn't no belly aching going on amongst the whole, but we just resigned ourselves to the fact that we was there and we got to have to make the best of it, and you didn't hear no belly aching much going on. We were just happy to be alive and hope we could live out the war.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't hear no griping. And that's why I say that when I got home and my kids wouldn't eat their food, I still to this day, and it's kind of a bad habit. When I sit down and film a plate, I can't, I'll eat it all. I don't know why, it's just, maybe I shouldn't do it. And I know I'm overeating sometimes, but that learned me that food you know, people in this country take food for granted. And you know, it's absolutely amazing how many people, if they did have to starve a little, what it could do. It'd be good for everybody to just have to go without a little bit. You get a little better perspective of things. In my books you would.
Mm-hmm.
You appreciate what you got so much better. Like I said, I wouldn't take anything for experience, but I'd hate to I wouldn't want to ever go through it again. But it learned me a lot of things that, well, I don't know. It just, I'm not too good at expressing my thoughts, I guess you might say, but I think it would be good for everybody. In fact, I think the best thing for this country right now, if all these young people coming out of high school had to serve a year in military service, I think that'd be the best thing in the world.
Mm-hmm. I do too. I spent 18 months in Vietnam.
You did.
Yep.
I like Vietnam, I tell you what, that's something else. Not that I'm not, I hate wars worse than anything else, but still, I think that military training does something for anybody. I know the training we had, the military training, kind of prepared us for, like being a prisoner of war. It helped a lot.
Mm-hmm. You know, Beckwith, Camp Beckwith.
Beckwith? Where's he from?
He lives in Balco.
Balco. That name sounds familiar, but I can't place him.
He was the radio operator on the B-17.
He was?
Shot down at his last mission,
On his 25th?
31st.
Oh, well, at the time I was flying, if you made 25,
Yeah.
you got to quit. And then they raised it.
And he spent 14 or 15 months in a prison camp.
Yeah.
And he said he was in the group that they took out and they marched back and forth across Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And the Russians advanced, the Americans advanced, and marched them back and forth. And
Yeah.
he said they marched 800 miles in 80 days, about 10 miles a day, back and forth.
Oh, my gosh.
And
Well, some of my crew members.
I was thinking if he was in the same prison camp.
He could have been. Very well. Because this prison camp at Stettin, Stallsville 4 there, they, I don't know, I'm just one of the lucky ones that got moved out there. And I know I had 3 of my crew members that was on that march.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to talk to them afterwards. And boy, it was anything but easy. It was terrible.
Yeah, he said that they had about 11,000 prisoners in the camp.
Yeah.
And they were all basically airmen.
Yeah. Well, that's, yeah.
And he said it was up by the Baltic Sea.
That's Stettin, or Barth, I'm sure. I bet he was in the same camp I was in.
Probably was.
He's from Balco,
Yeah.
Beckwith.
I haven't seen his name in there.
You never seen his name. I've got several guys named here from Oklahoma, but
Yeah, I've seen those.
but there's so many from different places, different camps. Well, I'll be darned.
Well, you know General Judy, don't you? Here in...
Well, I know of him. I'm not
He was a
really-
pilot on B-17.
He was. Yeah.
And he said he was the only one in his unit, the time he joined the unit, that made it through.
Is that right?
He said everyone that he either been killed or shot down. He was the only one that
Yeah.
went through the whole war.
Well, you know, when we started those missions flying over there, the odds of your finishing that 25 missions and getting to go back home was pretty great against you. We could see that.
Well, Mr. Beckwith told me that they would go out on a bombing mission, come back with 3 airplanes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And when did you come back to Woodward?
When?
Yeah.
Well, after I got discharged.
And when did you get discharged?
Well, I finally, after we got back to, after we got sent home from Virginia, after we got back in the States, then we got to come home, and then we had to go back to Florida, down there, and we spent some time down there, and then we got to come home again, and then they sent us, to Amarillo. That's where we got a discharge. Actually, we didn't have to do anything. It was just a matter of time, but that was in October of 45 when they finally got discharged.
Mm-hmm. And were you here for the tornado? In Woodward?
Yeah, I was living out south of Woodward here, living there right where I do now.
Yeah. Tell me about the tornado.
Well, I wasn't in it, but I know the day the tornado hit or the day before it hit, it blowed, it was real stormy and it blowed and it was cloudy and just looked like it's not a storm or something. But I know about 9 o'clock that night, it was the awfulest hardest straight wind there was. I thought it was going to take that house and go, but it didn't. And we actually didn't know anything about the tornado until the next morning. I think the electricity went off and everything. I didn't, it was, I don't know how we heard it even. I know the electricity was off. We couldn't have any, I don't think we had a radio. But we got in the pickup and come up here, and my gosh, it was terrible. I never seen anything so tore up in my life. I felt pretty fortunate then, too.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Did you come to town?
Yeah, we came to Woodward the next morning and looked it over, looked where we could.
What did it look like?
It looked like it'd been bombed, I guess you might say. Well, part of the town wasn't. The eastern part here wasn't hurt much, you know.
Mhm.
It was just the west side and the north side that really got it. Oh yeah, it just looked like it'd been bombed, I guess you might say.
Well, what else you want to talk about?
Well, after I got out of the Army, I come back and started farming again. Well, the fact is, I was farming before I went in the Army, and my dad kept my ground farmed up for me while I was gone. I had a place rented, and by the way, I'm still renting that same place today.
You are.
Farming there's 240 acres, and I rented in 1938. I started farming that place. And I'm still farming that same place today. It's rented ground too.
What is Kriege? Kriege. Is that prisoner?
Kriege, that's prisoner. Prisoner.
In German?
In German. Kriege. Yeah. So I went back to farming and raised a family, and oh yeah, I was married before I went in the Army. In August, I was married just 1st of August, and I went in the Army a little bit later. And then, well, the only son I got, he was born 1st of July in 1944, and I never knew anything about it until September of 44. That's when I got my first word of it.
When did your parents get word that you were alive?
I don't know for sure, but it was I think it took about a month, maybe 6 weeks, before they, well, I was I think, I'm not saying for sure how long it was now, but I think it was about a month before they finally got word that I was alive.
What's the letter you have?
Oh, that's some letters I got when I was prisoner of war. I don't know who this is from. They was just laying there some of that stuff. Here's one from old Ed Hughes. I don't know whether are you acquainted around here?
Oh, I know a few people.
Did you know Ed Hughes used to work up here at the Bank of Woodward?
I mean, Stock Exchange Bank.
He used to run the bank down at Sharon. See, there used to be a bank down there at Sharon.
Okay, yeah. You know Clay Gaines?
Yeah.
He was helping fly prisoners out of the Russian-held territory. He was in the war.
He was.
He was on B-24s, and that was part of his job was flying prisoners out from East Germany.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, we flew out on B-17s. We wasn't on B-24.
Maybe it was, I'm not sure what.
Yeah, well, he might have been. There's a letter old Ed Hughes sent me when I was prisoner of war over there. He's dead now. Do you know, Glenn Lucy?
I don't know the name.
Well, I don't know who this is from.
Ever figure out what they blotted out there?
Yeah. Hmm. Oh, this is a friend of mine too, he's dead too. Hmm. Oh, I'll tell you what, them letters, when we was prisoner of war, they really helped. Man, I'll tell you what. That's from a cousin of mine, that's from another. You have to be pretty careful of what you wrote when you
Yeah.
send a letter out, or they
Yeah.
censor the heck out of it. Oh, gosh. Yeah, it was September, I was prisoner.
Which one does this go in?
Oh, there goes in there. I was shot down on February 22nd. I think the first letter I got was about August,
Mm-hmm.
July or August before I got any mail. Oh,
I'd like to get copies of those too, if you let us copy them.
okay, be fine. You want to? Yeah.
Well,
There's a pair of German dogs up back here. You ever see them?
no.
After we liberated, there was this town right there by this prison camp. I went down there, some of us guys went down there and went to a big old building and
What's the name of the town?
Barth,
Oh, okay.
Barth.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked that stuff up in this old building. Even got some of them things.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
In fact, I brought a German helmet and a bayonet back with me. I've got them at home too.
Mm-hmm.
Just souvenirs. I guess that's all you can say.
Yeah. Well, I guess, anything else we want to talk about?
Oh, I guess not that. I've wasted enough time.
Yeah, that's been a good interview.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bronze Star, good conduct medal, all that stuff.
Say you got the Purple Heart
Yeah.
and Air Medal?
Yeah, with one oak leaf cluster.
Mm-hmm.
3 overseas bars and the EAME service medal with 1 Bronze Star. Good conduct medal.
Do you get any award for being a POW or anything?
Not until, I never put in for any compensation until a year ago, 2 years ago about now.
Mm-hmm.
And I got cataracts in both eyes. So I went down to VA Hospital, Oklahoma City, and got set up down there and got those fixed up. And while I was down there, I put in for some compensation on this. Well, my hearing went bad too when I was over there pretty well. I don't know whether that might have done it anyhow, but I'm getting I'm getting a $66 compensation check from the government now since then. It helps. Ain't a whole lot, but it helps. Well, I had a heart attack in '68, and damn insurance companies dropped me. And I wouldn't have went down there then probably, but it didn't have no health insurance, and I thought, well, I'm just gonna see if I can get a little through the VA.
Mhm.
So I went down there and took my stuff down there and got signed up with them. Oh yeah, by the way, I was gonna show you something here. I went down there, I didn't know anybody or anything, and they got little office down there in the VA hospital. It's, some veterans that's got this set up. And, they're the ones that helped me get that thing through, and then they helped me get in the hospital down there too. But I was gonna show you things. I run across a guy down there who was in the prison camp with me, and you know, I knew his name, I thought he looked familiar. Well, heck.
I see you have Abe Hesser there.
Huh?
Abe Hesser. See his name's in there.
Oh, it is.
He's director of state parks now.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Well, most of these guys here was right in the same barracks or compound with me.
They were.
You bet.
Yeah.
They were right, we were maybe in the same barracks or the same compound.
Mm-hmm.
All these guys here. I'll be darned. That's their handwriting, most of it. I
Yeah.
had most of them just,
Yeah, I'd like to, Xerox get a copy of that, because we'll try to look some of those guys up and interview them.
yeah. Well,
Do you have an extra copy of this today?
I've got some copies at home.
Can I have one of these?
Yeah.
Okay, good. We'll put that in your file.
Okay. Yeah.
And we'll make, or we can send it, we can copy it and send it back to you, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, you send it back to me then.
Okay.
Yeah.
In fact, we'll get it back when we get these. In fact, I'll try to get these copies while I'm up here.
Oh, okay. Well, anyhow, this guy's name. I can't. It's in here and I can't. I must be looking right at it and I can't. Well, I guess I wasted my time.
How many of these letters do you have at the house? Are these the only ones you
Oh,
have?
no, I got a bunch more. Yeah.
But would like to, if you would consider,
I've even got some old magazines, those American, those, well, we got them when we was over there in England.
if you'd consider, if you would give us one letter, because we're gonna have a special display. Now,
Oh.
these we've interviewed,
Oh, okay.
and that way we could have one letter put on display, and your name will be on it,
Mhm.
and then we'll Xerox this, give this back to you.
Okay. Okay, doke.
And we'll copy these others and get them back, and we'll copy this too.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,